SEC Kickoff with Vince Dooley is presented by PNC Bank for the achiever in you. Achievement is always in control. Find out how you can get control of your finances at pncvirtualwallet.com.
Hello again, football fans. Welcome back to another episode of SEC Kickoff. I'm Vince Dooley. As we enter Week 9, the Eastern and Western Division races are taking shape. This Saturday will feature key matchups in the march to the SEC Championship game. Before we preview Saturday's SEC action, let's quickly look back at Week 8. LSU at Texas A&M. Texas A&M, led by quarterback Johnny Manziel and a fired-up Aggie defense, gave LSU fits for most of the first half, leading 12-0. But the LSU defense slowly started to take charge and forced two Aggie turnovers with less than 2 minutes to play in the half that resulted in two Tiger touchdowns, including a sensational diving catch in the end zone by Cadron Boone.
Deep again, and a diving attempt! It's caught! Boone with the touchdown, and LSU leads.
With 11 seconds left, this gave LSU the lead at halftime, 14-12. In the second half, the LSU defense got stronger and quicker in putting pressure on Manziel, forcing him to throw a total of 3 interceptions. Meanwhile, for the second straight week, LSU's freshman Jeremy Hill rushed for over 100 yards, including a long run over 40 yards to clinch the victory as LSU won 24-19. South Carolina at Florida. As was the case with the other key SEC game, LSU and Texas A&M, it was forced turnovers in the South Carolina-Florida game that was the deciding factor. The Gators shocked the Gamecocks early, forcing 3 turnovers that resulted in 3 Florida touchdowns. The Gators only had to drive 29 yards, 3 yards, and then 1 yard for those 3 touchdowns. Despite those disastrous turnovers, South Carolina's defense dominated the first half, restricting Florida to only 29 yards and 2 first downs. Surprisingly, despite losing in a rout 44-11, South Carolina outgained the Gators 193 yards to 182 yards, a dismal offensive statistic for both teams. Another amazing statistic is that Gator quarterback Jeff Driscoll threw 4 touchdown passes while throwing for only 93 yards. The harassing Gator defense put so much pressure on South Carolina that the Gamecocks benched their quarterback Connor Shaw in the second half. Florida's great defense was supplemented by a superb kicking game, led by Kyle Christie, who punted 7 times for an average of around 50 yards. Turnovers had a major impact across the conference last week, as they do most of the time, but from Gainesville to College Station, missed assignments and poor ball security led to momentum-changing plays. In this week's Football 101, I'd like to discuss the importance of ball security on offense, whether an interception or a fumble. This is what in coaching we call sound football. There's an axiom we often use in football. A team has got to learn first not to beat themselves before they learn to beat their opponent. And we call that sound football. We can define it in this way. Sound football on offense is no fumbles, no pass interception, no penalties, and no missed assignments. On defense, also, no long touchdown runs, no long touchdown passes. Make them go the long way. No penalties and no missed assignments. Now, it's It ties in quite nicely with sound football that the three teams that are undefeated in the conference are also the three teams that are in the top 9 in turnover ratio. Mississippi State is number 1 in the nation in turnover ratio. Alabama is number 3 in the nation in turnover ratio. And Florida's number 9 in the nation in turnover ratio, and all three of them are very sound football teams. Coming off their win in College Station, Les Miles and his Tigers get a much-needed week off to rest and prepare for their highly anticipated matchup with Alabama. LSU and Alabama will get together next Saturday in Baton Rouge. But first, the Tide must get past a tough and sound Mississippi State football team. Saturday night, and Dan Mullins, who leads his undefeated Bulldogs into Tuscaloosa to take on number 1 Alabama. The game kicks off at 8:30 Eastern, and ESPN will have the coverage. Number 1 Alabama, for the first time, will be tested schedule-wise, not only by an undefeated SEC team in Mississippi State, but the following week, as we have said, by the powerful LSU defensive team in Baton Rouge. Mississippi State is a well-balanced, sound football team who may not be great in any particular phase, but does it all very well in all phases of the game. While Mississippi State is well-balanced and does everything very well in all phases of the game, the problem for the Bulldogs is that Alabama does all those things even better. The Crimson Tide team is disciplined, methodical, sound, and eventually should subdue a well-coached band of Maroons who will fight like Bulldogs for 60 minutes.
Virtual Wallet can help you be that person who's good with money. See what's free to spend, move money with a slide, save with a shake. Feel good about your decisions.
Well, Saturday afternoon may well determine the Eastern Division champion as Florida and Georgia get together in Jacksonville. As we seem to mention every week, this is another one of those classic SEC rivalries, and one I'm very familiar with. This is a matchup where legendary performances are remembered forever. Speaking of legendary performances, for this week's SEC Flashback, we look back to the 1980 Florida-Georgia game. At that time, our Georgia football team was marching to an undefeated season and possibly a national championship. However, on this day, the Gators really played well and took it to us for most of the game, leading actually in the closing minutes of the game. We were beat. In fact, Florida was celebrating, probably celebrating too early.
But this Florida kick put the Gators up 21-20.
All hope was lost, it seemed, with about a minute left, and Florida was ahead of us, and we were down on our own 7-yard line.
With little time remaining, this Florida punt to Georgia's 8-yard line seemed to be the final thrust that would knock Georgia from the unbeaten ranks.
It was 3rd and about 13, and we had not done anything.
They may not blitz, they won't. Buck back 3rd down on the 8, in trouble.
When Buck blew through the balls, had to scramble, and threw the ball to Lindsey Scott.
Got a block behind him, gonna throw on a run, complete to the 25.
And then Lindsey took off with that great speed of his.
To the 30, Lindsey Scott 35-40, Lindsey Scott 45-50.
But when he caught the ball and turned and started to run, so we got more than a first down, and of course there was long legs stretched out.
45-40, 1, Lindsey, 25-20, 50, 10, 5, Lindsey stop, Lindsey stop, Lindsey stop.
What an amazing day that was in Jacksonville. Lindsey Scott made one of the greatest plays in college football history, and one that I'll certainly never forget. As we continue to focus on the big game in Jacksonville Saturday, we turn to our head coach one-on-one segment This week, we sit down with Florida coach Will Muschamp, who has a very unique perspective on this rivalry. Muschamp grew up in Gainesville, but played defensive back at Georgia. Now, as coach, Muschamp leads the Gators back to national prominence. The Bulldogs will be standing in his way on Saturday.
Florida-Georgia game is when you ride on those buses and you go across that St. Johns River, if your blood's not boiling, something's wrong with you. It's a great environment. It's one of the special events in college football.
Now that we've heard from Coach Muschamp, let me give you my thoughts on the matchup in Jacksonville. The game will kick off at 3:30 Eastern Time and will be broadcast nationally on CBS. Florida versus Georgia in Jacksonville. Most everybody believes this is the championship game of the SEC East. BCS rated number 10 Georgia versus number 2 Florida. Despite being shocked by South Carolina 3 weeks ago and being frightened by a weak Kentucky team last week, the Bulldogs are in a good position for an upset. Florida is coming off an emotional big SEC game against South Carolina and will be a strong favorite to win. Georgia struggled, obviously looking ahead, against Kentucky and has not played a complete game yet, especially on defense, where there's plenty of raw talent. Georgia's offense that can run and throw is led by Aaron Murray, who threw for 427 yards last week and broke the Georgia career record for touchdown passes with 73, breaking the record of David Green. Georgia's offense will be the Gators' biggest test so far this year. However, the Bulldogs' task will be a tough one against the Gators. While the Gators' offense is not flashy, it is sound and gets stronger as the game wears on under their leader, Jeff Driscoll. But it is the Gators' harassing, disruptive defense and their superb kicking game that give Florida the edge. We'll see if this team, with a mission, will be able to withstand what I believe will be a fired-up bunch of Georgia Bulldogs. For those of you who will be watching all of the great SEC action on TV, here is the weekend broadcast schedule. Well, there you have it, SEC fans. Another episode is in the books, and another great college football weekend is upon us. I hope you have a great football Saturday, and I look forward to checking in with you next week as the march to Atlanta continues. I'm Vince Dooley, and I'll see you next time on SEC Kickoff.
SEC Kickoff with Vince Dooley is presented by PNC Bank for the achiever in you. Achievement is always in control. Find out how you can get control of your finances at pncvirtualwallet.com.